This is the Late Round Podcast with your host, JJ Zachariason.
What's up, everyone? It's JJ Zachariason, the editor-in-chief at FanDuel and at NumberFire.com, and this is episode 408 of the Late Round Podcast, one of many shows that are part of the FanDuel Podcast Network. Thanks for tuning in. This 10 Trend Show is the shortest Late Round Podcast episode that you're going to hear each week. The idea of each episode is super straightforward. I find a data trend, state what that trend is, and then I talk about it. And I do it 10 times, and that's the show. Week 1 is going to be a little bit different than most since there's nothing to dig into for the current season. So today, I'll use some historic data. But moving forward, I'll mostly be using data from the current season. Now, before getting into the trends this week, Week 1 is finally upon us, and FanDuel is back in 2020 with the Sunday Million Contest. For just a $4 entry fee, compete to win over $3 million in prizes, including $1 million for first place. Plus, if you roster the player to score the first touchdown on the slate, you can split a jackpot of $250,000. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. The first trend this week is that the Baltimore Ravens tight ends last season had almost a 43% target share. It was by far the highest tight end target share that a team has had since 2011. This is significant because Hayden Hurst is no longer in the picture for them. That may not seem like that big of a deal since Hurst wasn't super fantasy relevant in Baltimore, but he actually saw 9.4% of the team's targets last season. He ran 207 routes according to Pro Football Focus, while Mark Andrews ran 295. Andrews was just targeted on almost 33% of his routes run, giving him the highest targets per route run rate among relevant tight ends last year. This is where Mark Andrews' ceiling can come from. If he ends up playing more and running more routes, which is possible now that Hayden Hurst is gone, he can end up getting into that top tier of tight ends. It's not the easiest ask in the world, but it's certainly possible. When Kenyon Drake got to Arizona last season, he averaged a running back rush share per game of about 85% and a target share of almost 14%. He dipped below a 10% target share in just one game. I've talked about Drake's upside on the show throughout the summer, and it's because it's there. These numbers tell us that it's there. Just for some context, that 85% running back rush share mark was only hit by Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette last year. And the 14% target share was only hit by 8 different running backs. I expect Chase Edmonds to be plenty involved in this offense, but Drake absolutely has top 5 upside in 2020 within an offense that could be explosive. Derrick Henry has seen more than 3 targets in a game just once in his career outside the playoffs. That's the trend. And this trend has a chance to be meaningful for 2 reasons. The Titans only have 2 running backs on the roster in Henry and rookie Darrynton Evans. It's not like they're not going to pass the ball to the running back position. So it means either, number 1, Darrynton Evans is going to have a decent role to where he could end up being usable in PPR formats even without a Derrick Henry injury. But number 2, Derrick Henry may finally take a step forward and see more looks as a pass catcher. That's the main reason I've been cool with drafting Derrick Henry this year despite the regression that's going to hit this Titans offense. Henry has more upside than I think that some people realize this season. The Washington football team not only ran the fewest plays in the league last year, but they ran the second fewest plays from any team since 2011. You may look at Terry McLaurin's target total from last year and not be that impressed, but his target share, which is always important to give things context, his target share was just fine. If Washington had just run an average number of plays, we're looking at a target total for McLaurin that's 20 targets higher than where he finished last year. I've been into the pieces of this offense all offseason because they're a little bit ambiguous and they're cheap as a result. McLaurin has a chance to be a stud. Antonio Gibson had a ton of upside even before the Adrian Peterson release. And then there's Logan Thomas too, who I talked about on yesterday's episode. This plays run regression will happen and help those guys in 2020, at least in fantasy football. In his 4 years as offensive coordinator for the Falcons, Dirk Cutter's offenses have ranked in the top 4 in neutral script pass rate during each one of those seasons. I used this stat a good bit over the summer, but it's an important one because Atlanta's basically a lock to see a lot of passing volume this year. And then all the while, they've got a pretty shallow target tree. It's why it's so easy to buy into Calvin Ridley having a big year and taking a step forward, and why Hayden Hurst is an easy tight end breakout candidate. Before tearing his ACL last year, Preston Williams had more targets than Devontae Parker. Williams has been way undervalued this season considering there's not a whole lot of competition in Miami. He appears to be healthy, and as a rookie last year, he actually was leading that team in targets before going down with his season-ending injury. This trend is just to say, don't sleep on Preston Williams. Aaron Jones scored 89% of Green Bay's rushing touchdowns last year despite seeing just 2/3 of the team's overall running back rushes and a 57% total rushing share. Only Leonard Fournette saw a higher percentage of his team's rushing touchdowns last season. This is just another statistic to show that Aaron Jones has touchdown regression coming here in 2020. He did see a lot of work at the goal line, and that explains a lot of his number. But according to most touchdown regression related metrics like Mike Clay's opportunity adjusted touchdown or the one that I made that I've never named, Aaron Jones should have had closer to 11 touchdowns last year instead of 19. With A.J. Dillon now in the picture, I'm a little bit worried about Jones in fantasy football here in 2020. Since 2011, so 9 seasons worth of data, Andy Reid's offenses have produced 5 RB1 top 12 seasons. Now, Reid has worked with good running backs like Jamal Charles, LaShawn McCoy, and Kareem Hunt. But this is just one of the many reasons to be bullish on rookie Clyde Edwards-Helaire this year. I fully expect him to become the next great Andy Reid running back. The Saints were 4th in the NFL last year in pass-to-rush touchdown ratio, and Drew Brees had the highest touchdown rate of his entire career. I'm fully expecting a bounce-back year from Alvin Kamara as a result of this. Kamara's numbers in the red zone and close to the goal line last year looked a lot like his rookie season, except he saw 51 more rushes last year versus that rookie season. So we really should have expected a little bit more love close to the end zone. But I'm not concerned because historically, things like touchdown rate and pass-to-rush touchdown ratio, those numbers regress. Alvin Kamara is in store for a big season. The last trend this week is that Phillip Rivers running back groups have finished in the top 6 in target share in 6 of the last 9 seasons. Now, I use this statistic a lot throughout the offseason too, because it's one of the few player-specific personnel usage trends that I think does matter. There's a lot of noise when looking at how quarterbacks target certain positions, since a lot of times they're targeting those positions because players at those positions are good. But even though the Chargers have had good running backs, for Rivers to be this consistent at throwing the ball to that position, and then for the Colts to come out this offseason and say that their running backs are being used more in the passing game, there's definitely something there. A lot of people have elevated Nyheim Hines as a result. And while I do think that he does get a little bit of a bump, I still worry about how frequently he's going to be on the field. I think this should just make you like all of the running backs in that backfield a little bit more. And it's a big reason I see a path to a seriously high ceiling for Jonathan Taylor as early as this year. That's going to do it for today's show. Thanks to all of you for listening. If you've yet subscribed to the Late Round Podcast, make sure you are by searching for it pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter @LateRoundQB. Thanks, everyone. I'm back tomorrow with the weekly matchup show.